Hello and welcome to Indus News. Live from Islamabad, I'm Jawad Hami and these are the headlines. The Taliban say negotiations are underway to set up an inclusive Islamic government that considers all Afghans. Spokesperson Sohail Shaheen says there is no time for any elections and a new constitution will be drafted once the leadership is selected. Meanwhile, a UN report says the Taliban have stepped up their search and are going door to door for people who worked with foreign forces. It says they are threatening to kill or arrest family members if wanted individuals do not give themselves up. Indian troops have martyred two more civilians in occupied Kashmir's Pulwama district. The youths were targeted during a so-called cordon and search operation in the Pampore area. Pakistan is remembering pilot officer Rashid Minhaz on his 50th martyrdom anniversary. Minhaz is the youngest and only Pakistani Air Force officer to receive the highest valor award, Nishan-e-Haider. On the occasion, Pakistan's military paid rich tribute to Minhaz's bravery and supreme sacrifice. Brazil has registered nearly 1,000 daily deaths from COVID-19 and over 36,000 cases. In Pakistan, the virus claimed 70 lives and infected more than 3,200 people overnight. Globally, the fatality toll has exceeded 4.4 million, while the caseload is over 209 million. A UN report says 2020 was the deadliest year on record for refugees crossing the Bay of Bengal and Andaman Sea. It said 218 refugees died or went missing at the sea, making an already dangerous journey 8 times more deadly than in 2019. The route is used for Rohingya attempting to reach Southeast Asia from the sprawling refugee camps in Bangladesh. Those were the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now with the news in detail. The Taliban say negotiations are underway to set up an inclusive Islamic government that considers all Afghans. Spokesperson Sohail Shaheen says there is no time for any elections and a new constitution will be drafted once the leadership is selected. This report has the details.
The normalcy seems to be slowly returning in Afghanistan. Shaheen said Afghans need international assistance as they come out of war and destruction. In an interview, he said the country's freedom was restricted under the US 20 years of occupation. The spokesperson expressed pleas for help in terms of restoring various sectors, including health, education, and infrastructure in Afghanistan. He also said the nearly $9.5 billion in assets which Washington has frozen belong to Afghans.
So we need to rebuild our country and to create opportunity of employment for our people. And so for that, there is so much need for assistance, other countries' assistance, and also for our own budget to be released to be spent for the benefit of our people.
Shaheen said China can play a big role in rebuilding Afghanistan. He noted the Taliban are committed to not allowing anyone to make Afghanistan a jumping pad for terrorist activities.
Pakistan says it is set to evacuate 350 people from Afghanistan today on 2 special flights. Earlier, the Taliban said several countries have reached out to them for help in evacuating their nationals or employees from Kabul. More in this report.
The situation in Afghanistan continues to panic the citizens there as well as the world, while the governments evacuate their people. Islamabad says about 1,100 people have been expatriated in the last 2 days, with more such flights in the pipeline. White House said the U.S. has evacuated another 3,000 people from Kabul, of which 350 are U.S. citizens. While NATO official noted over 18,000 people have been flown out of Kabul airport so far. Earlier, a UN report said the Taliban have stepped up their search and are going door to door for people who worked with foreign forces. It added that they are threatening to kill or arrest family members if wanted individuals do not give themselves up. Meanwhile, the Taliban urged unity ahead of Friday prayers, calling on imams to persuade people not to leave Afghanistan.
We are now joined by our correspondent Sumaira Khan, live from the Kabul airport, where thousands are queued as authorities struggle to manage the massive evacuation process. Sumaira, what's the situation on the ground?
I'm right now standing at the site that is being surveilled militarily, and it is the part of Hamid Karzai International Airport, Kabul, and this other gate is being managed by the foreign forces and Taliban security forces. Recently, it was handed over to Taliban to take control of the massive influx. Those who want to leave country without proper and legitimate documents, they don't have any passport, they don't have visas, but they are gathering here in order to have access to the airport and to the runways where the evacuation flights are landing and taking off. I spoke to few of these, and in Persian they were saying that we want America to take us to take everyone with us to America, because this war was waged on Afghanistan due to their wish and whim. So right now we are their responsibility. I don't know why this statement is coming from the masses of Afghanistan, but I am totally unable to understand that right here, women, children, families, all the entire family, people are right now waiting for hours and days and nights that they should be going to America, and it's America's, Britain's, and every international community and every country. You can hear the gunshots as well, because right now there are two forces, foreign forces, that includes Turkish, Azeris, Americans, and few of NATO contingents that they are right now trying to disperse the masses through these aerial firings. And right now I saw a few of those losing their temper towards this influx, and since I'm speaking to them, even I'm not able to get the scenario that those who are having businesses, those who are settled in the city, they don't have any issues with the discipline and with the crime rate, but they want to leave just to have asylums in other countries. So let's see what happens next. I'll keep you posted over there.
Clearly, the gunshots can be heard in the backdrop. Sumaira Khan, our correspondent over there in Kabul at the Hamid Karzai International Airport. It's a time for a short break. We'll include more stories, but after this break, stay tuned. Welcome back. Pakistan says it is set to evacuate 350 people from Afghanistan today on 2 special flights. Earlier, the Taliban said several countries have reached out to them for help in evacuating their nationals or employees from Kabul. For more on this, we are now joined by Lieutenant General Naeem Khalid Lodi, defense analyst, with us. Thank you very much for your time at Indus News. General Lodi, the Taliban say they have not violated any human rights or harassed anyone after the takeover of Kabul. Then why is there such chaos at the Kabul airport with so many people wanting to flee the country?
Okay, just assume that in any poor country, you tell the people that they can move to Europe or America or other modern countries without visa, with a free ride. Now you tell me how many people will queue up and how many people would like to go. So this is actually that phenomena that you have a free ride, you can go without visa. But many people would like to go, irrespective whether they are afraid of Taliban or they like Taliban or they hate Taliban. So I don't think this phenomena can be totally attributed to the Taliban phenomena or the Taliban regime, because they have yet to actually make a government and start asserting themselves. That has not yet happened. So I take it that way. Yeah, of course, the Western media, they are trying to create a lot of fuss out of it. That if you just go to any African country and tell them that they can go freely to Europe and America and without any, fear. So just see how many people would like to go. So I think it is that way.
General Lodi, what would be the options for the Taliban if the international community refuses to recognize an unelected government?
The thing is that they are still going through that phenomena of inclusive government. It is not yet complete, and they will find, I think, this is the most difficult phase of Taliban's takeover as far as Afghanistan is concerned. Of course, the second difficult would be to actually create law and order and to create all that infrastructure which is required for government. So this phase which is now going on, they have promised that it will be an inclusive government. So we'll have to wait and see. I think their attitude, their behavior is all, targeted for these two things. One, to get international recognition, and secondly, to get internal support. So let us see how much they succeed in that. This is I think, a big test of their political understanding and how they manage the thing.
So General Lodi, Amarullah Saleh vowed last week that he would fight back to take Kabul again. Are we looking at a renewed civil war in the near future?
I think if there is a civil war, it will be of a very small, I would say, nature, small volume, because except for Panjshir Valley, everything else is with the Taliban. Of course, there can be problems in various cities, and we should also remember that in the world, some of the very leading countries and leading powers, they are not happy with what has happened, and they would like to create chaos. They would like to even they can have some false flag operations and create rift between Taliban and various factions. So all this is expected. You cannot, for 20 years there was a superpower with their, allies, and there was a regime, artificially placed regime under them, and they were ruling. So the things cannot be so peaceful as we are all expecting that one day the Taliban take over and second day they will start ruling. It is not possible. As far as Panjshir Valley is concerned, I think it is surrounded from all sides by Taliban. Of course, it's a very difficult terrain. The fighting can take place, but not all Panjshiris want to fight. That also we know. So I think there can be a bit of trouble. It will not be of that volume which cannot be overcome by Taliban.
Lieutenant General retired Naeem Khalid Lodi, defense analyst. Thank you very much for your time at Indus News. We really appreciate that. And for more on this, we are joined by Mr. Shehzad Chaudhary, defense analyst from Islamabad. Mr. Chaudhary, thank you very much for your time at Indus News. First of all, Pakistan is once again faced with the mammoth task of incorporating refugees from Afghanistan. How grave is the threat of anti-Pakistan elements infiltrating into the country under the garb of refugees and creating a law and order threat for Pakistan?
Yes, you have a point there. I think there is a point of concern for Pakistan in terms of refugees, in terms of terrorists or the maleficent intended people making their way as refugees in Pakistan. But luckily, the refugee system that we have created in the sense of giving them cards, or they must have a valid Afghan identity in terms of the passport, and then a valid visa on it for entering Pakistan. That means that the Pakistani embassy in Kabul has had a good look at them before giving them the visa. These two steps at least ensure that those intending harm for Pakistan perhaps may not be able to find entry into Pakistan that easily. Having said that, we also must keep in mind that since the entry and exit points are now fully controlled, and we have a few of those along the border which are now manned by biodata verification. We have trained manpower there for entry and exit control. We have fenced the border along with Afghanistan with a much greater length of almost about 98% of it now. So that really leaves very little option for the people who always intended harm for Pakistan to find an easy entry into Pakistan in the garb of refugees. So while the threat is there, and there will always be some element of it that might just seep through still, we need to keep our guards up. But we are far more better placed than what we were, let's say, about 20 years back, when this deluge of refugees began entering Pakistan or made their way into Pakistan.
Mr. Chaudhary, Pakistan dismissed the U.S. mantra of do more regarding Afghanistan and refused to become a partner in Pentagon's over-the-horizon capability. How do you think it will impact Islamabad's ties with Washington in the long term?
Well, I don't think one particular fact or one particular element of a relationship establishes the totality of the relationship. Yes, I don't think Pakistan has ever said no to Pentagon, the Pakistani military, and the U.S. military has had a long-lasting relationship and a very vibrant relationship over the last about 6 decades or so. And so, therefore, what we might call the apprehension of worsening ties may actually not come about. What determines the relationship between any two nations is based upon immediate interests. Some of them vital, some of them important, and some of them for that moment, which are required to be pursued. So, in that sense, because the Taliban ruled Afghanistan is contiguous to Pakistan, has a much greater reliance, has always had a great reliance on Pakistan. So when you look at these two factors, you realize that Pakistan is never irrelevant to any nation which may have interest in Afghanistan. So in that sense, the U.S. will find a lot to depend on as far as Pakistan is concerned. So regardless of whether it's Pentagon or the State Department, the government of the United States will have a continuing relationship. Yes, it can see its ups and downs, but more or less it shall be a relationship that is necessitated by times and by the need of ensuring that the two work together in terms of maintaining stability in Afghanistan and ensuring that the kind of elements that you mentioned in your first question, the maleficent ones, for example, intending malice will not find footing in Afghanistan.
Mr. Chaudhary, Pakistan has repeatedly said it has no favorites in Afghanistan, nor will it support a government created as a result of a military takeover of Afghanistan. With the Taliban now saying there is no time for an election, how do you believe Pakistan should approach this situation?
I think it's for the Afghans to decide what kind of elections they want. I mean, elections, the Westminster model, for example, or the American democratic model, or for that matter, so many other models that you might find of democracy around the world may not apply as a formula in Afghanistan. It is for the Afghan people. They have what is called a loy jirga, which is actually the lower house of the parliament, and that parliament will get together, the loy jirga will get together at some time and endorse the decisions that are placed before it by the Shura Council of the Taliban, because I believe that is the kind of a structure or organization that they want to retain in Afghanistan for governing Afghanistan. It's probably more or less similar to how they manage in terms of structures, not in terms of policies, but in terms of structures, Afghanistan from 96 to 2001. So if that be so, there will be the voice of the people reflected by the loy jirga. And so if that is what is coming through, that may not exactly be in the way and in the manner that the American model works, or the British model works, or the French model works, or any other democratic model that exists in the world. But yes, it will be a unique model of its own that will perhaps be put in place in Afghanistan. So we really, sitting in Pakistan, we can't decide whether the model that has been that is in use in Afghanistan actually compares or is exactly or mimics what is the Western sense of democracy. Democracy more means participatory decision making, and that is what must come through in Islam through a shura or through a shura mediation or interaction. So that's also a consultative process. And then you have a jirga which is below that, which is like a parliament which endorses those decisions. So it is actually more or less essentially a democratic model of working.
Mr. Shehzad Chaudhry, defense analyst, joining us from Islamabad. Thank you very much for joining Indus News. And for more on this, we are joined by Mr. Einar Tenjin, political analyst, joining us from Beijing. Mr. Tenjin, thank you very much for your time at Indus News. The Taliban are pushing for a government without an election. How would that impact China's decision-making process regarding the recognition of a Taliban administration in Kabul?
I don't think it affects China's understanding. I mean, the historical roots of Afghanistan are in their loyal jirga. This is a meeting of chieftains and things like that. I think China has enough respect for other countries so that they understand that it's not going to necessarily be exactly the way it is in China or the US, or Europe, or anywhere else.
Mr. Tenjin, after the US, its allies and its installed government in Kabul abandoned all Afghans, they are now suddenly concerned about the human rights situation in the war-torn country. How do you see this behavior?
This is simply a way of distracting attention away from the colossal failure of the US in terms of its handling of this. The US was going to walk away from Afghanistan, but the way that it happened was more than cataclysmic. 20 years, $2 trillion, 2,000 American lives, 240,000 Afghani lives, hundreds of thousands of injured and wounded, and millions of people displaced. And yet everything collapsed within 10 days. It goes to show that this was a hollow situation. You cannot impose your values on other countries and peoples.
So, Mr. Tenjin, how does China plan on contributing to the rebuilding of Afghanistan?
It's not clear yet. First off, China would have to recognize whatever central government is there. They'd have to be a series of leaders. There's a whole mechanism that has to be established so that you have country-to-country relations. And at that point, China will look at exactly what the needs of Afghanistan are and what assurances they can get in terms of security precautions. China's concern, as well as Russia and Pakistan's and everyone else who surrounds Afghanistan, they're concerned that this would not be a situation where any kind of a terrorism would be launched from Afghan soil, or that it would encourage other groups who would try to take harbor or refuge in Afghanistan. Once that is established, I think China will take a normal relationship with Afghanistan, probably inviting them to be part of the Belt and Road Initiative. There will be cries of, China is taking advantage of Afghanistan. But given the history and what the U.S. has done and failed to do, I don't think that it will get much traction.
Mr. Einar Tenjin, political analyst, joining us from Beijing. Thank you very much for your time at Indus News. We really appreciate that. And now moving on, Pakistan says an inclusive political settlement in Afghanistan is the best way forward for peace and stability in the country. Foreign Minister Shah Mehmood Qureshi, during a phone call with his Danish counterpart, said a peaceful Afghanistan is important for peace in the region. Qureshi said the foremost priority is to ensure safety and security as well as protection of rights of the Afghan people. He said it is equally important for the international community to remain engaged in support of the Afghan people for humanitarian aid. The foreign minister said Pakistan providing full support to the Danish government in its evacuation efforts. The Danish foreign minister thanked the government of Pakistan for the support and agreed to remain in close contact. Indian troops have murdered 2 more civilians in occupied Kashmir's Pulwama district. The youths were targeted during a military operation in the Pampore area. Occupying troops launched a massive operation in different areas of Sopore town and sealed all entry and exit points to the market. They also continued operations in the Thana Mandi area of the Rajouri district. Rights groups say the Indian forces have martyred over 400 Kashmiris since August 2019. Pakistan is remembering pilot officer Rashid Minhaz on his 50th martyrdom anniversary. Minhaz is the youngest and only Pakistan Air Force officer to receive the highest Valor Award in Nishan-e-Haider. On the occasion, Pakistan's military paid rich tribute to Minhaz's bravery and supreme sacrifice. In a tweet, the ISPR said Minhaz lived up to great traditions of PAF defending the motherland. Hailing from Karachi, Minhaz was commissioned as a pilot in the Pakistan Air Force in 1971. He crashed his jet when a Bengali instructor pilot, Flight Lieutenant Matiur Rahman, hijacked it. Rahman intended to defect to India along with the jet trainer. In his memory, the Pakistan Air Force base at Kamra was renamed PAF Base Minhaz, often called Minhaz Kamra. Brazil has registered nearly 1,000 daily deaths from COVID-19 and over 36,000 infections. Globally, the fatalities toll has exceeded 4.4 million, while the caseload is over 209 million. More in this report.
Amid the global surge in infections, more countries are opting for lockdowns as well as they seek to speed up their vaccination drives. In the US, record Delta wave affecting kids has raised fear in the country as the schools reopen. The situation is grave in states like Florida and Texas, where Republican governors have barred schools from making students wear masks. Meanwhile, Mexico is battling a new wave as daily cases and deaths hit record highs and the fatalities toll passed 251,000.
Unfortunately, even though people are already vaccinated, they continue to get infected. People don't understand it. They go out without face masks. The saddest thing is that now the children are getting sick. Yesterday, several children infected with COVID-19 were hospitalized.
Over in the Oceania, New Zealand has extended its nationwide lockdown amid the recent surge in infections. Australia reported its biggest single-day rise in the cases as authorities began doling out emergency supplies of the vaccine in Sydney's suburbs. A lockdown in the country's largest city has been extended throughout September alongside tougher measures to curb Delta variant.
So we're doing everything we can. We've thrown everything at this. And now it's time to bunker down. And I can't stress that enough. It is time for all of us to bunker down. Take this as seriously as we can, although so many of us have, the vast majority have. This is it. We do everything we can to reduce case numbers and we do everything we can to get those vaccination rates up.
Japan is planning to ramp up daily COVID-19 tests, borrowing from anti-contagion measures used in the recent Tokyo Olympics. In India, 540 more people died overnight and over 36,000 tested positive. The country's death toll has crossed 433,000 with over 32 million cases.
Pakistan has registered 70 more deaths from the COVID-19 overnight. The health ministry says the death toll is nearing 24,800. It said more than 3,200 people tested positive for the virus in the past 24 hours. The ministry says the positivity rate of the overnight cases was 6.23%. The country's caseload has exceeded 1,116,000, while over 1 million people have recovered. The number of active cases has crossed 89,000, of which nearly 4,900 are critical. More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Syria says its air defense systems have intercepted several missiles from an Israeli air raid targeting Damascus and Homs regions. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said at least 3 missiles targeted the weapon depots belonging to Hezbollah in the Damascus countryside. It said it is unclear whether the attack caused any casualties. The raids follow a recent flare-up on the Israel-Lebanon border between Hezbollah and the Israeli military. A UN report says 2020 was the deadliest year on record for refugees crossing the Bay of Bengal and Andaman Sea. It said 218 refugees died or went missing at sea, making an already dangerous journey even 8 times more deadlier than in 2019. The UNHCR urged all states in the region to search for and rescue refugees in distress at sea and allow them to disembark on a place of safety. The Bay of Bengal and Andaman Sea route is used by Rohingya attempting to reach Southeast Asia from the sprawling refugee camps in Bangladesh. In Spain, 37 migrants are feared dead after a dinghy carrying dozens capsized off the coast of the Canary Islands. Spain's maritime rescue services say they have found 2 bodies and rescued a woman. She told authorities there were 40 migrants aboard the boat. The rescue service said there are no signs of any other survivors near the capsized vessel. At least 1,851 people lost their lives last year while attempting the crossing from Africa to Europe. In central Mali, unknown gunmen have killed at least 15 soldiers in Mopti region in an ambush. A car bomb hit a convoy before being followed by a hail of bullets. The army said the vehicle blasted as troops went from the town of Douenza to Boni. In a statement, it said efforts are underway to evacuate the wounded. It is not clear who carried out the attack. Malian, French and the UN peacekeepers have been battling different terror groups in the Mopti region. In Mexico, the tropical storm Grace has dumped heavy rain on the Caribbean coast just south of the ancient Mayan temples of the town of Tulum. The storm has torn off the roofs of houses and knocked out electricity to thousands. Pushing across the land weakened the storm, but by evening it canted back over the Gulf of Mexico. For hours, families had to seek shelter from cracking trees and flying debris amid winds blowing up to 65 miles per hour and even faster. The U.S. National Hurricane Center says the Category 1 storm is regaining strength as it heads for the Mexican mainland. They said Grace would dump 4 to 8 inches of rain over through Friday, which could result in the flash and urban flooding. In the U.S., dry and windy weather has hindered the efforts to contain destructive fires in Northern California. The blazes have destroyed hundreds of buildings and forced thousands of people to flee. An estimated 1,100 firefighters are struggling to control more than a dozen large wildfires in the area. Over in France, fires in the Var region have scorched over 7,000 hectares of land, forcing several thousands to evacuate. Meanwhile, in Greece, a major wildfire that has ravaged a pine forest for 4 days is on the wane, but not yet under control. 461 fighters, 166 vehicles, 4 water-dropping planes and 4 helicopters are fighting the blaze. The fire department said 55 new forest blazes broke out in a day earlier, with most tackled in their initial stages. Scientists say climate change from the burning of coal, oil and natural gas is driving more extreme events. Chinese astronauts aboard the Shenzhou 12 mission have conducted a seconded spacewalk outside the station. China's space agency says the 2 men installed the foot restraints and extravehicular working platform on the mechanical arm. They also lifted a panoramic camera and extended the pump set to prepare for the subsequent expansion of the station. The 3-man crew of the mission are in orbit for 2 months since they arrived at the space station on June 17th. They will stay there for 1 more month before returning to Earth. American tech giant Tesla has unveiled a humanoid robot called the Tesla Bot. The company's CEO, Elon Musk, says the robot would eliminate dangerous, repetitive and boring tasks now performed by humans. He said it will most likely be launched by the next year. The 5 foot 8 inches robot will weigh 125 pounds and will be built from lightweight materials. It runs on the same artificial intelligence used by the electric automaker's fleet of autonomous vehicles. The unexpected reveal came at the end of Tesla's AI Day presentation. And now the business updates. European stocks are trading lower amid concerns over monetary policies and COVID's Delta variant. Italy's FTSE MIB led the losses, shedding more than 0.5%. Frankfurt's DAX dipped over 0.25%. FTSE in London and the pan-European stock 600 dropped nearly 0.25% each. CAC 40 in Paris also retreated marginally. And that is all for now. For further updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.